Thank you, Speaker. I rise on behalf of the Greens to speak on the Crimes Amendment Assaults on Frontline Emergency and Health Workers Bill 2022 and put on the record that the Greens oppose this piece of legislation. It's absolutely critical to recognise that no person in their workplace should ever be subjected to violence, to assault or to mistreatment. But it's also important to recognise that the way to solve the attacks and violence on frontline emergency service workers isn't to come into the chamber and simply wave a strong law and order banner in the hope that it will go away. Back in 2017, I sat as a member of the Legislative Assembly's inquiry into violence against emergency services personnel as part of the Law and Safety Committee. On that committee, we heard evidence from a significant number of individuals and organisations that felt very strongly about the fact that there was so much more the New South Wales government could do to address the violence inflicted on emergency service personnel. In that inquiry, we came to the final report included 47 recommendations. Finding number 12, not a recommendation, may I add, a finding, number 12, made it clear that it was not necessary to create new offences or penalties to appropriately punish offenders for violence against emergency services personnel. The overwhelming evidence that we heard on that inquiry was that the provisions that exist currently in the Crimes Act allow for action to be taken in relation to anyone that was to perpetrate harm or violence against a frontline emergency service worker. What the other recommendations did is recognise that we don't have enough data about this, that there was not enough resourcing to our healthcare professionals, to our paramedics, to people working in frontline emergency service provisions. And we heard of complete inequity where the kinds of alarm systems that were set up and the technology that existed in a police car were not available to our AMBOs. We heard the fact that there was a whole lot of additional resourcing and reporting that happened in some areas of the emergency services and not others. Now, we're not here discussing all of the other recommendations that could be put in place to address the violence against frontline and emergency service workers, because the reality is that that would cost the Liberal National Government money, that would require them to put the safety of workers and listen to the calls of workers first and foremost. Instead, what we have is a government coming in here, putting on the record an attempt to create a new offence, which would seek in this bill to increase penalties under a new offence for people who assault health workers, correctional and youth justice officers and emergency service workers and volunteers. And let me be clear, in opposing this legislation, the Greens do not condone violence against any of those individuals. What we are saying very clearly is if we want to address the violence and the harm and the unsafe workplaces of workers in our community, there are so many more things that we need to do. And simply creating a new offence is not going to solve those crises. I note that this opposition by the Greens is shared by Legal Aid New South Wales, the Aboriginal Legal Service, the Law Society of New South Wales and the Young Lawyers of the Law Society of New South Wales. As I said, the Legislative Assembly inquiry into violence against emergency service personnel in 2017 did not recommend the creation of any new offence types or penalties, nor did it support the creation of any further mandatory minimum sentences. In particular, the Law Society of New South Wales noted in its submission to the Sentencing Council that a broad range of offences already exist that appropriately capture violent conduct against emergency service workers, that courts already have the discretion to punish the most serious of attacks, and that defendants already appear to receive harsher penalties and harsher sentences when assaults are against police officers. The Aboriginal Legal Services notes that the existing sentencing options available in New South Wales are already sufficient, and that Section 21A(2)(a) of the Crime Sentencing Procedure Act 1999 already provides for aggravating factors to be taken into account by the courts in the process of determining a sentence, including providing that offences against emergency service personnel will be treated more seriously by a sentencing court, and that mandatory sentencing, including the changes set out in this bill, almost always have a disproportionate impact on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Legal Aid New South Wales also noted in their submission to the Sentencing Council in 2020 that the current regime is adequate and that existing offence sentencing regimes recognise police and emergency services personnel as victims who represent an aggravating factor, acknowledging the need for greater punishment where they are the victims acting in the course of their public or community functions. Everyone deserves a right to be safe at work. And if the Liberal National Government was serious about protecting frontline emergency and health workers, they should start by listening to the thousands of nurses who have been on strike, demanding that this government fix the industrial conditions needed to ensure that they can do their jobs safely. That starts with legislating or putting into policy nurse-to-patient ratios. It starts with listening to the desperate cries of help of those people working in our emergency departments who are saying they are under-resourced. It comes from the new graduates who are responsible overnight, sometimes for more patients that they can possibly be responsible for. It comes from recognising that babies count in maternity and infant wards when it comes to the ratio of nurses to patients. It comes by recognising the fact that we are underpaying and under-training security staff in hospitals that need more resourcing and more support. It comes from the fact that we see the New South Wales Police get state-of-the-art equipment to alert of an emergency if they are under attack in a police van, but our AMBOs do not get that same resourcing. These are just some of the very many things that the New South Wales Liberal National Government could be doing if they were genuinely concerned about the work, health and safety of people in health and frontline emergency services in our state. Whether that be nurses, midwives, or hospital workers or community health workers who are crying out for support, they are taking to the streets, sounding the alarm because they are overworked, underpaid, and being absolutely stretched to their limits. To watch outside of RPA the other week when nurses were striking, grown nurses who deal with the most extreme of tragic situations in emergency in tears because they know that they are not able to give the care that they want to be able to give to patients, and the stress and the mental load that they are carrying as a result of that is a disgrace. The fact that we are in here seeing the government think that they can address issues of safety at work by simply legislating their way out of responsibility, by putting a tough law and order approach rather than delivering the care for our health workers and our frontline community service workers and emergency workers that they need is critical. The Greens stand firm in our support of the demands of workers in this state. We reject the unfair wage freeze. We support mandated staff to patient ratios. We recognise the need to fix chronic staff shortages, for urgent intervention to alleviate unreasonable workloads, and for genuine investment to address long-standing safety and wellbeing issues. And we will always support workers' rights to strike when it comes to raising these issues. The Greens are calling on this government to provide proper industrial support to exhausted frontline workers to ensure that our health system is fully resourced and that everyone, no matter what their workplace, has the right to put their safety first. We don't do this by simply coming in here and creating a new offence. We do this by backing in the demands of those working in frontline healthcare and emergency services who are saying they need more resourcing, they need more support, and they need more adequate equipment to make sure that they will always be safe in their workplace. We need to be preventing this kind of assault, not coming in here and creating new offences after the fact that mean that people will have been assaulted by the time these laws would have any effect.